Daniel had always been a man with an easy smile and a carefree gaze. At 35, he maintained a youthful appearance, with slightly dishevelled brown hair and green eyes that seemed to hold a constant amusement. His laid-back and good-humoured manner attracted people but hid a certain immaturity that he was reluctant to admit. He grew up in a loving family, but one that never pressured him much. His parents, both university professors, valued freedom and individual choices above all else. Perhaps because of this, Daniel developed an aversion to commitments and greater responsibilities. He liked life as it was, light, without demands, full of possibilities. Laura, on the other hand, was the embodiment of determination. At 33, she had deep brown eyes that seemed to see beyond the obvious. Her long black hair framed a delicate yet determined face. Coming from a traditional family in the countryside, Laura learned from an early age the value of hard work and lasting relationships. Graduated in architecture, she always dreamed of building not just buildings, but a solid life. Her office was known for attention to detail and the ability to turn ideas into concrete reality. That's how Laura faced life, with planning, dedication, and a clear vision of the future. Daniel and Laura met during college, introduced by mutual friends. From the beginning, there was a natural affinity between them, even though they came from different worlds. He was extroverted, always ready for a joke or an unexpected plan, while she had a keen eye for detail and an intense passion for art and culture. The years passed, and the contact between them remained. They shared groups of friends, casual meetings in cafes, and conversations that sometimes lasted longer than planned. It wasn't love at first sight, but a connection that built slowly until they realized there was something more there. The first few months together were magical. Walks around the city, debates about movies and books, late nights talking about everything and nothing. Daniel showed Laura how to live in the present without so many ties, while she made him reflect on deeper issues. Different but complementary, they found each other in the balance between lightness and intensity. Daniel's apartment, a spacious loft in the city centre, became the couple's meeting point. It was a place that well reflected his personality, modern, with few pieces of furniture, but full of fun and unusual objects. Gradually, Laura started leaving her mark there, bringing plants, some books, small touches of coziness. As time went by, Laura began to think about bigger steps. Not that she wanted to change Daniel, but she believed their love could grow even more. It was on a starry night on the apartment balcony that she broached the subject for the first time. "Dan, have you ever thought about what our life would be like in a few years?" she asked, gazing at the illuminated city below them. Daniel, comfortably leaning back in the chair, replied with his usual carefree smile, "Oh, love, why think about that now? We have time." Laura felt a slight tightness in her chest, but she didn't press the matter. After all, they really did have time, didn't they? It was just a matter of Daniel realizing that building a future together could be as exciting as living in the present. Months turned into years. Laura continued to grow in her career, taking on increasingly larger projects. Daniel kept his job as a freelance designer, always with new clients, but without a defined career plan. With each professional achievement of Laura's and every new dream she shared, Daniel would respond with the same smile and the same phrase, "We have time, love." At first, Laura found it quite charming, but gradually, the phrase began to sound like an excuse, a way for Daniel to avoid any more serious commitment. There were countless times Laura tried to bring up the subject. She talked about living together, about plans for the future, about the possibility of having children one day. Daniel always avoided the topic, changed the subject, or responded with jokes. "Laura, don't you think you're overthinking? Let's enjoy the now," he would say, pulling her for an impromptu dance in the living room or suggesting a last-minute trip. And Laura went along with it because she loved Daniel. She loved his spontaneous nature, his ability to make her laugh even on the toughest days. But a part of her, the part that dreamed of building a life together, grew increasingly restless. Laura's friends began to notice. At a Sunday lunch, Her best friend, Camilla, couldn't hold back. "Laura, don't you think you're waiting too long? It's been 5 years." Laura defended Daniel as she always did. "He just needs some time. Not everyone is in a hurry to get married and have kids." But Camilla's words kept echoing in her mind. Was she deluding herself? Would Daniel ever be ready for the type of life she desired? The last straw came on an ordinary night. Laura had a particularly difficult day at work. An important client had cancelled a project at the last minute, and she was devastated. All she wanted was the comfort of Daniel, a word of support, a hug that said everything would be okay. When she arrived at his apartment, she found Daniel playing video games with some friends. He barely noticed her arrival, merely nodding his head, focused on the screen. Laura sat on the couch, watching the scene. There was the man she loved, oblivious to her suffering, immersed in his own carefree world. It was as if a curtain had opened before her eyes. She realized with painful clarity that Daniel would never change. Not because he was a bad person, but because he simply saw no need for change. For him, life was perfect as it was. That night, after the friends left, Laura tried one last time. With tears in her eyes, she opened her heart. "Dan, I love you, but I can no longer live only in the present. I need to know that we are building something together, that we have a future." Daniel, for the first time, seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. His usual smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of confusion and a bit of fear. "Laura, you know I love you, but why change? We're doing so well like this." It was at that moment that Laura understood. Love, no matter how strong, wasn't enough. She wanted a partnership, someone who would share her dreams and help realize them. And Daniel, as wonderful as he was in so many ways, was not that person. The decision to leave was the hardest Laura ever made. She cried for nights on end, questioning herself 1,000 times whether she was doing the right thing. But deep down, she knew it was necessary. Daniel was in shock. He never imagined that Laura would actually leave him. In the first few days, he would call constantly, send messages and promise changes. But little by little, as Laura stood firm in her decision, he began to accept it. She will come back, he thought. It's just a phase. After all, we have all the time in the world. Months passed. Laura immersed herself in work, seeking to heal the wounds of her heart. Slowly, she began rediscovering herself, remembering the dreams she had set aside. Daniel, in turn, continued his life as before. He went out with friends, met new people. But deep down, he felt an emptiness he couldn't explain. Sometimes, he found himself looking at his phone, waiting for a message from Laura that never came. 2 years passed. Daniel met Juliana, a 28-year-old designer as carefree as he was. It was easy to be with her, no demands, no serious talks about the future. Daniel convinced himself that he was happy, that he had gotten over Laura. It was on a Friday night when everything changed. Daniel was at a restaurant with Juliana and some friends. It was the first time he officially introduced her as his girlfriend. The atmosphere was relaxed, with soft music playing in the background and the lively chatter of conversations. Daniel laughed at a joke he had just told, feeling comfortable in his role as the life of the party. It was then that he heard a familiar voice calling a name that made his heart stop for a second. "Laura! What a surprise to find you here!" He turned slowly, almost afraid of what he would see. And there she was. Laura. But not as he remembered. The Laura that Daniel saw now radiated a confidence and serenity that he had never noticed before. Her eyes shone in a different way, and her smile, oh, that smile that had enchanted him so many times, now seemed even more luminous. But it wasn't just Laura's appearance that shocked him. Beside her, holding hands, was a man. Tall, well-dressed, with a gentle look that never left Laura. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. Juliana was saying something beside him, but he couldn't hear. His entire being was focused on the scene in front of him. Laura noticed them. For a brief moment their eyes met. Daniel saw a mix of surprise and something else in her eyes. Nostalgia? Affection? He couldn't decipher it. With a grace Daniel didn't remember she had, Laura approached the group. She greeted everyone with a genuine smile, including Daniel. "Daniel, it's so good to see you. How have you been?" she asked, with a sincerity that completely disarmed him. He stammered a response, introduced Juliana mechanically, but his eyes couldn't leave Laura's hand, where an engagement ring glittered discreetly. The man next to Laura introduced himself as André, an architect, just like her. He spoke with a calmness and confidence that made Daniel feel strangely inadequate. The conversation flowed for a few minutes, but for Daniel, it seemed like an eternity. Every word from Laura, every glance exchanged between her and André felt like a stab in his chest. It wasn't jealousy that he felt. It was something deeper, more painful. It was regret. It was the cruel realization of all the missed opportunities, of all the moments when he could have done things differently. Laura talked about her new projects, about the house she was building with André, about the plans for the wedding that would take place in a few months. Each word was a reminder of the future she had always wanted, the future Daniel never allowed himself to imagine by her side. When Laura and André said their goodbyes, promising to send a wedding invitation, Daniel felt as if a part of him was leaving with her. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Juliana talked animatedly about something, but Daniel couldn't focus. His mind was filled with memories, moments with Laura, all the times she tried to talk about the future, and he would change the subject. When he got home, Daniel found himself standing on the balcony of his apartment, looking at the city as he had done so many times with Laura. But now, the view that once brought him a sense of freedom seemed empty and lonely. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt the weight of time. Not the time he always thought he had plenty of, but the time that had passed, never to return. The time of missed opportunities, unspoken words, postponed commitments. He thought of Juliana, sleeping peacefully in the bedroom. She was incredible, fun, uncomplicated. Everything he always thought he wanted. But now, looking inward, Daniel realized that what he truly desired was something more. He wanted the depth he had with Laura, the conversations that lasted all night, the dreams shared. He wanted the feeling of building something together, of growing side by side. All the things he had run from for so long now seemed to be exactly what his heart yearned for. Daniel cried that night. He cried for the love he lost, for the life he could have had, for all the times he said, "We have time," when, in fact, time was passing quickly. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself doing something he had never done before, deeply reflecting on his life, his choices, his values. He realized that his aversion to commitments was not freedom, but fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of losing his individuality. He looked around his apartment, at the fun and unusual objects that used to define him, and felt a strange dissatisfaction. For the first time, he longed for something more, something lasting, something built with care and love over time. Daniel knew he could not go back. Laura had moved on, found someone who shared her dreams and was ready to build a life with her. But he could learn from this. He could grow, change, become the person he always had the potential to be. With Juliana, he had an honest conversation. He explained his feelings, his new perceptions about life. It was painful but necessary. She deserved someone who was on the same page as her, just as he now realized he deserved someone who shared his new life goals. In the months that followed, Daniel dedicated himself to getting to know himself better. He sought therapy, read books on personal development, and talked openly with friends and family about his fears and aspirations. Gradually, he began making changes in his life. He took on more responsibilities at work, got involved in long-term projects, and allowed himself to think about the future without fear. When Laura's wedding invitation arrived, Daniel felt a mixture of emotions. There was sadness, yes, for what could have been. But there was also gratitude. Gratitude for Laura being brave enough to follow her heart, even if it meant leaving him. Gratitude for the life lesson that, although painful, made him grow. Daniel decided to go to the wedding. Not to try to win Laura back or lament the past, but to genuinely celebrate her happiness and close this chapter of his life with maturity. On the day of the ceremony, seeing Laura walking towards the altar, radiant and in love, Daniel felt a peace he hadn't expected. He realized that true love is not just about finding the right person, but also about being the right person. As he watched Laura and Andre exchange vows, promising to build a life together, Daniel made a silent promise to himself. He promised to never again postpone happiness, to never again be afraid of commitment, to never again let time slip through his fingers. At the end of the ceremony, Daniel approached the couple to congratulate them. The hug he exchanged with Laura was brief but meaningful. They were no longer the passionate couple they had been years ago, but two people who respected each other and genuinely wished each other happiness. "Be very happy, Laura," Daniel said with a sincere smile. "You deserve all the love in the world." Laura looked into his eyes, and for a moment Daniel saw a reflection of the affection they once shared. "You deserve it too, Dan. I hope you find everything you're looking for." Leaving the wedding party, Daniel walked through the city streets, feeling light and full of possibilities. The future, which once seemed daunting, now opened up before him as a path full of promises. He understood that time, that precious resource he always thought he had in abundance, was actually the greatest gift we can give someone. And from that day on, Daniel decided he would use his time wisely, building meaningful relationships, pursuing dreams, and above all, living each moment with the awareness that tomorrow is not guaranteed. The story of Daniel and Laura had come to an end. But for Daniel, it was just the beginning of a new journey. A journey of self-discovery, growth, and perhaps a new love. A love built on solid foundations of maturity, commitment, and the understanding that time, though seemingly infinite, is truly the most precious asset we have. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.